Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is 5:30 on a Saturday morning. I am recording. My cameras are rolling. My lights are on. My music is on. I think that I am pretty much on track for starting. It is Saturday morning at 5:30 in the morning. That means it is time for us to pull a new random object out of the Random Object Randomogrifier. That is a toy out of a toy box. There are 500 some odd toys in the toy box, and it allows us to draw a random object every day, pull a random object every day, and draw it. Go ahead and spritz these watercolors so that they're nice and juicy, so that later on when it comes time to use them, they'll just be ready to go. I don't have to sit there and scrub them with the brush. I can just dip them like they're a fine liquid watercolor like they should be. Today we have a covered wagon, and this particular type of covered wagon has the nickname Prairie Schooner. This is the kind of covered wagon you would have seen in old western movies or in on the settler trails going across the United States during the U.S. expansion during the Manifest Destiny days, when everybody believed that it was our God-given ordained to occupy the entire continent of America, of North America, that we should go from sea to shining sea. There are basically two types of covered wagon that were popular at the time. There was this one, which is basically just a farm wagon with a cover on it, nicknamed a Prairie Schooner because of the way the canvas looked going down the trails. It kind of looked like canvas sails on the ocean, and so they nicknamed it the Prairie Schooner. Schooner. Tomato. I don't really want to delve into the details just yet. Right now we're in the composition phase where we're trying to make sure that everything fits where it's supposed to go. But some of these details are anchor points, and so I need to make sure that the anchors fit on the page, and I need to make sure that I use them to tell where everything else goes. But the main point of this part is just to make sure that everything fits on the page where you want it to go. That is very important. It is, however, very easy just to jump right into the details. Typical dimensions for one of these covered wagons is 4 foot by 9 foot, packed to the gills, as it were, with everything they could put in there, which means that when it came time to rest, there was nowhere inside there to rest. You know, I'm gonna tell you honestly, I always thought these were like the gypsy caravans. I always thought these were like the little gypsy homes where you had everything kind of stacked up and put away, so that, you know what, this is exactly one of those instances where I'm drawing what I think should be there and not what is actually there. This is exactly what the purpose of this exercise is to teach you to to draw what you see and not what you think it ought to be. One, two, three, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. See, there's another one. There's another one. Should be right in front of this one. And it should lean slightly forward. And then the last one should do that. But now we have a whole lot of extra lines I have to contend with to figure out which ones are which. That is exactly the kind of thing that we're here to practice, is drawing what I see and not what I expect to be there. You can't do portraits if you're drawing what you expect to see, because then everybody gets almond-shaped eyes. So yeah, I thought these things had room inside. For sleeping and for avoiding the weather, keeping kids out of trouble. But no, that's just not the case at all. They had they were packed to the edge to edge. They were only 4 foot by 9, so they were packed edge to edge on the inside with as much as they could carry. So, you know, there's no going back. It's not like you can just say, hey, I'm going to come back for a second trip. This was advertised, like on the Oregon Trail, for instance. It was advertised as a 3-month ordeal to get from St. Louis, Missouri, or Missouri City, Texas, to get to Oregon City, Oregon. It was advertised as a 3-month ordeal, but it most often took 6 months. And it's not like this is insulated. It's not like this is a house where they can avoid the elements. This is a covered wagon with a thin piece of canvas across the top of it. Just to block the wind. There's no shocks, there's no suspension. So the thing is always bumping and rocking and trying to break down. It was hard. It was hard work. It was not comfortable. It was not fun. Everybody acted like it would be fun. It's funny to go back and they look at their journals of the travelers. Dad says, you know, when I was a young kid, I knew people, the wards that went all over town in a wagon like this. They plowed people's gardens with the mules. I've only ever seen these things in museums. in Western parades. But it never occurred to me that these things were not like little mobile homes. I always thought that they were had room for sleeping inside and all of that jazz. But it turns out that they do not. I have to remember that this is a toy, and it is not. It's not a real stage. It is not a real covered wagon sitting on here. So there are some concessions to be made for detail. That some detail is there, and there's some detail that's not there. There's some detail that I want to be there. That is not, but that is only because it's a toy. Like there's some detail on those wheels, but the hubs aren't, the spokes aren't really carved out. They're just essence of spokes. So it's no good drawing the spokes in. I've moved. I changed my perspective. Apparently I've done that a couple of times. Oh well. That's what we're here to do, is to learn. And in the movies, you know, they're all riding horses. They're all chit-chatting. Women are in the back of the wagon making sewing stitches and stuff, you know, riding down the trail inside the wagon. That's not how it happened. Most of the time they spent walking beside the wagon because it was so bumpy and miserable inside the wagon. And when I was in Iraq, I was assigned to a artillery unit. The tracked vehicle that I had to occupy was just like that, going down the trail. You know, we thought we'd be inside there. We thought we could sleep. We had 3 men in there. One man would sleep. One man would be up top. One man would be driving. And we'd rotate every 6 hours or so. Turns out you can't sleep like that. And if I couldn't sleep in my track like that, without sheer exhaustion, there was no way to sleep in my track like that. Has the camera changed at all? Yes, good. Just that concerns me. So I can only imagine what it was like for them, because we had some modicum of suspension. Yeah, that's a bit dark, but it'll be all right, because it'll dry light, and we'll come back and we'll darken it in. We'll come back and we'll darken other areas in. But these guys, these settlers, they often didn't have horses. They just had the ox and mules to pull the trailers. Pull the wagons, rather. But we see in the movies that they had horses, you know, because everybody had horses, right? No, horses were expensive. Horses were expensive, so they didn't have them. And horses had to have special food. And you know, these are the things you don't consider as a kid when you learn about this stuff. You spend a few weeks talking about the Oregon Trail. Maybe you played the game. You spend a few weeks learning about it, but then you just kind of move on, and you never really go back and give it any more thought, or most of us don't really go back and give it any more thought. But there's a whole lot of this that you see in the movies, and that's what you think is gospel. But really, it just makes for good entertainment. It's not at all historically accurate. Because nobody wants to watch Maureen O'Hara deal with dysentery. We just want to see her giving John Wayne a hard time. Can't talk, Harding. Nobody under 40 knows who Maureen O'Hara is. But she's the reason for my redhead fetish. I took too long getting back to that, so I have a line there that shouldn't be so abrupt. All right. This whole side is shaded from the rest of this. But there are some parts that are more shaded than others. Do. Okay. Do. I need that to dry real quick. How are we doing on time? Oh, it's already 5:50. Mom says I can't imagine the difficulties. Too bad if you become ill, you had to keep up and keep going. Yeah, and as they we go. Hang on, let's try this real quick. Watching paint dry. Watching paint dry is probably the most exciting part of this whole process. The worst part is we're going to have to do it at least one more time. All right. So let's just get the color on it real quick. What was I saying? Oh yeah, as they go, you know, the animals get tired. Sometimes the animals just refuse to go any further. They just lay down and die. And when they said that, I was like, yeah, I've been there. So sometimes, you know, some of those towns along the way exist because the people were like, nope, no further. I can't do this no more. I just can't go any further. But you can still go, like on the Oregon Trail, you can still go out there today and you can see all the stuff that they would throw out of the wagon to lighten the load. Dressers, packed, just whole suitcases. Claudia, good morning, Claudia. 32 degrees in the Netherlands. That's pretty warm. What is that, about 77 degrees Fahrenheit? We've missed you too, Claudia. Claudia's in the Netherlands. She comes and visits us at lunch. 90 Fahrenheit. I knew it was hot. But you know, the wheels invented some 3,500, somewhere around 5,000 years ago, 3,500 BC. You know, the wagon was invented not long after that. They didn't have them in North America until the 1400s because there was no large domesticated animal for the Native Americans to pull their wagons. So they didn't have the wheel in use like this. They had wheels in toys, but they didn't have them in use like this. So there's no roads like there would have been throughout Europe, and that's kind of what people expected there to be. They expected to show up and there to be a road, because, you know, Europe had been around for thousands of years. There were paved roads. The Romans paved roads. So they expected when they got out on the trail that there would be roads to follow, and there were not. So these wagons, they loaded these wagons up like they were accustomed to going down European roads. You know, there's the occasional cobblestone, but nothing like what you expect going over the rocky terrain of a hillside, right? Of a mountainside. And so the wagon's packed all the way to the top. It's heavy. They've got 2 or 4 oxen pulling this thing, or a couple of mules pulling this thing. And as they go along, everybody gets tired. They just start throwing stuff out of the wagon to make the load lighter. Makes the women cry. They only carried about 3 or 4 changes of clothes with them, because the packed wagon, you couldn't get into the packed wagon, so you had to have 2 or 3 changes of clothes that you could carry. But after the 6-month journey, they just threw those clothes away. They couldn't continue on with that stuff. So the whole trail is littered with that stuff as they just toss it out the window. And if you got sick, you just had to keep going, because the caravan would leave you. Caravan would just leave you behind. What is today? Today's the 21st. Today is my grandmother's 92nd birthday, 92 years old. And that's still too young to have ridden in one of these for anything other than fun. These came into service in the 1700s in this fashion, in the 1700s, and were used in the 1840s for westward expansion, 1890s, all the way up to the 1890s for westward expansion. Now there's no way I would ride with my family for 6 months. All right, guys, let's see how this turned out. We're gonna call this one done. Go to the overhead there, compare it, and you can tell you have a completely different perspective from what I have. Let's see what it looks like from my perspective. Eject the camera. Wait, I have to turn this microphone off first. There we go. Now I can eject this, and I can eject this, and I take that off, and you can see I'll let you see it from my perspective. And you know, I kind of moved around a little bit, so you can tell when I did. You can tell exactly where I can tell exactly where I moved around and changed perspective, saw it from different angles. But again, that's why we're here. It's to practice drawing what we see. Still a cute drawing. Don't ask questions. Get in. No time to talk. Get in. We're catching dysentery. You have caught dysentery and died. So let's see here. Tomorrow is the 22nd, and my little girl has already pulled an egg for tomorrow, and it is what kind of deal? It's a micro machine. It's a Star Wars ship. I'm not sure what kind of ship this is. I think it's a frigate. We'll have to look. I'll have to look it up. I'm on the wrong camera. I'll have to look it up and see what exactly it is. I'll hit up my buddy Kevin, see if he can tell me what kind of ship that is, or I'll just scour the internet. But it's a Star Wars spaceship from the Micro Machines collection. And so that's what we'll do tomorrow. If you're watching this and it's before 5:30 in the morning, that means that it is the trailer for Sunday, and we're about to start it. So guys, thank you so much for joining me. You know I look forward to it every day. You guys keep me accountable to my art practice, and you're my art buddies. So we will see you tomorrow. Same Artistic Biker time, same Artistic Biker channel. And then we dance. We dance until somebody says they see me dancing. Oh, did you see the subtle hint, Claudia? Wait. I got to show you this. I want you guys to see this. I think this is funny. I laughed and laughed and laughed about this. I laughed and laughed and laughed about this. Watch this. Today's subtle hint is brought to you by Click the Notification Bell. Anyway, we'll see you tomorrow, guys. Same Artistic Biker time, same Artistic Biker channel. And then we dance. We dance till somebody says they see me dancing. Actually, they're supposed to tell me to remind me to take my mic off. That way, because I went to work with this the other day. But we want to make sure the lag catches up with the video.